Hi, I'm Madeline James, and today we're going to be having a bit of a chat. My daughter is playing in the room with me, so if you hear her, it's fine. I recently finished taking the Reedsy How to Write a Novel course, which you will have seen mentioned in some of my more recent videos in the last few months. I want to share a full final review now that I'm done, but there are a few things I wanted to chat about concerning writing journeys, because it is something this course has really gotten me thinking on. I will have chapters if you want to skip ahead to the review. But first, just the disclaimer that this video is sponsored by Reedsy, and while this will be a completely honest review, I was able to take the course for free, which was really cool. And I do have an affiliate link and a discount link that will be in the description below. So the Reedsy course is what it sounds like, a course teaching you and supporting you through writing your first draft. I cover the mechanics of the course in an earlier video, so I'm not going to rehash everything, but I will link that one below. But you have daily video lessons, some readings, and extra assignments over the course of about 15 weeks, while you write approximately 75,000 words, and you go through all of this with a cohort of other writers. You can talk with each other in discussions, do critique swaps, etc. But one of the things in this course is the weekly author video, where they show a handful of successful authors talking about the same topic. And they talk about how their novels start, where they get inspiration from, their opinions on characterization, how much they research about writing, etc. There's a ton of topics. I think they do one almost every single week. And throughout all of these videos, you really get this idea of how diverse the experiences and journeys of all these authors has been. There are so many differences, and it highlights this idea that there is no one way to write a great book, no one way to become an author, no one path to take on this journey. And this has gotten me thinking on my own writing journey. I thought, as a fun reflection after finishing this course, I would talk a little about my writing journey. And I have been writing novels as long as I can remember. I have little books that I wrote in stapled together printer paper from back in first grade. I have books I wrote in middle school, high school, etc. It has always been something I have done, but I will not say it was always something I've done well or took very seriously. It was just a hobby I enjoyed doing. Now, through college and then into the start of my adult life, I really struggled with being consistent. I really struggled with finishing the book I was working on. It felt extremely aimless. It was like I realized I wanted to be a good writer and a serious writer, but I didn't know how to do that. And I started to think about how I wanted to be a writer, and if that was my dream, I needed to actually start seriously working towards it. And I had been stuck in a restarting and world-building spiral, I think, for 4 years on the book I was writing at the time, and my word count was like maybe 15,000 words. That's about it. It was tiny. And this was about maybe 6 years ago that I really made this conscious effort to take my writing seriously and try to be a published author. And until that point, I knew nothing about publishing. I had never read a craft book. I had never set goals for myself. So I started with watching YouTube videos, actually. I started listening to writers and writing advice. I started reading craft books. I started outlining. I started tracking word count. I set myself goals. And I prioritized my writing time. And then, after maybe 15,000 words into that first draft that I'd been working on for 4 years, I finished it in 9 months, ending, I think it was something around 140 to 150,000 words, which is a lot. This was a huge milestone for me. It's been a relatively slow but steady process since then of continuing to learn, trying things which sometimes work for me and sometimes really don't. I went through revision pass after revision pass on my book. I met a writer's group and got critique feedback. I started working on another book. I finished that first book and queried it. I finished the first draft of the second book. I started writing a third book now. There's been so many things. And I think the most important thing I have learned is just learning how different everyone is. I can love the idea of a certain planning or outlining approach, but if it doesn't work for me, I have to pivot and try something different. I have to pay attention to what I am inspired by and what I am not. I've learned that while I can write digitally now, I use Scrivener, my world building and outlining inspiration dies if I try to use an online tool to store or create all of that. I have to create physical outlines and put sticky notes on a wall and maintain handwritten story Bibles. It's just the way my mind works. And I've lost a lot of time that could have been productive trying digital methods out, but, I learned important lessons. My writing space and maintaining a certain atmosphere is also really important for me to write efficiently. Like the lighting down to the type of music I listen to the spaces I can write in, to how I need my notes to be referenceable, all has a very delicate balance that results in the best writing sessions for me. And I'm sure there's still tons of improvements I can make. Like, I don't think I've found the perfect solution yet. When I first really started taking my writing seriously, I hadn't been diagnosed as ADHD yet. So there were definitely a lot of things I sort of figured out due to that, due to trial and error that I understand a lot better now. I have considered talking about some of the things that work for me as an ADHD writer. So let me know if that would be interesting to you. But since starting this YouTube channel and abandoning the other writing platforms I attempted, I've seen it's just been so great for me. Like, seriously, making these videos actually helps me a lot. 6 years ago, I knew none of this stuff, and it has been a lot of work, and there is a lot more to come, but I have accomplished a lot. It's really cool to think about where I might be in another 6 years because I've come so far in the last 6. And I think the big lesson here is that you can't follow anyone else's processes or journeys or timelines. You have to find your own. And while I think trying what works for other people is a really good way to learn that, we have to listen to ourselves and show ourselves some grace. It's hard, it takes time, and if you're struggling, a breakthrough is just around the corner. You just have to keep trying new things and listening to yourself. The weekly author videos in the How to Write a Novel course are a really good way to try and show that to a new writer, and I think that is one of the most important lessons that you can get out of it, and it honestly might have been one of my favorite parts. But let's switch back over to talking about my full review of the course. High level, I really liked it. I think there was a lot of good information, and I think this format is something that is important for some people for sure. I like that it's 3 months, which gives you a more reasonable pacing than something like writing 50,000 words in 1 month. And there are a few reasons I think you might choose to take a course like this, or situations it would be particularly suited for. First, if you're not a self-learner, aka someone who is good at learning things on their own without any teacher or curriculum, and having a structured course where you are taught like a university class is going to be really helpful for you. If you're like me and are really good at learning on your own, then that benefit might not be as important to you. Secondly, if you need the accountability, this course gives you a structured timeline, ways to track your word count, other people that are going through it with you, etc., which can be a really big bonus for some people. The fact that this is a big monetary commitment can also be a big accountability thing. If you invest in writing your book in 15 weeks, you're probably more likely to follow through. Third, if you're relatively new to writing and you don't know where to start or how to get started or find the whole process of writing a book really overwhelming or need that little push to level up, a course like this that is structured and gives you only small bits of information at a time as you need them is going to give you a really good overview of what you need to know in a way that isn't as overwhelming. Fourth, if you don't have a writing community and you want to meet other writers and work alongside them, this would be great. If you already have your own writing and critique groups and all that, then that benefit won't be as big of a deal for you. If you fit some of those, I think this could be a really good course that I would recommend considering. It is extremely well done. I think it would be life-changing is a bit too dramatic, but very impactful for its target audience. Now, this course is expensive, like $1,250 expensive. Even if you use my 10% off discount code, it is an investment along the lines of signing up for a college course. While I think the value is definitely there, it's definitely worth that amount of money, you have to think about whether that value that it has is worth that much money for you, which is again why I think that you should think about how many of those benefits that it gives you are important to you and if that's worth the money for you. A few critiques I have, or they're not even critiques, but more things to keep in mind when considering a course like this, or this one in particular. First, you have to be able to commit to the 15 weeks. You have access to the material a while after the course ends, so to an extent you can go at your own pace, like within reason, but you lose a lot of the benefits to this sort of course structure if you do that. If you really need something that you can take at your own pace, start or stop, pick up whenever, then there are probably other options that might be more fitted to what you need. Although again, you'd lose the benefits of going through this with a whole group, you lose some of that accountability, etc. Second, this is not geared towards serious plotters. Now, most of the people taking this course are going to be newer writers who probably don't have a super complex plotting process yet, so I think it's probably not a big issue for most people, even those that will eventually be serious plotters. You have to learn to plot to be a plotter, right? But for me, I know I can't just pants, like, at all. Even having a rough outline is pantsing for me. I need a very detailed outline, or I get stuck and I struggle to write very quickly or well. I've always been like that. So even though I tried to rush through gathering my basic outline before I started this course, I work a lot better if I have a lot longer months to outline first. So if you already know you're like that, this course may not be the right fit for you. Focusing on learning about structure and plotting to make an outline first, and then learning about the actual writing process itself as you're drafting may work better. Now, this isn't to say that you can't do that work ahead of time, but then you're learning a lot of the stuff from the course ahead of time and self-learning and doing all of that anyway, so it really depends on your situation. Third, this course is obviously really general from a genre perspective. It is intended to apply to any genre, so by that, it obviously doesn't really get into anything very genre specific. Everything it talks about is kind of applicable to everything. This is a great overview, but I mean, I felt like this course was more fitted towards contemporary or literary fiction, memoirs too, maybe anything in that sort of category where, you know, you don't need a ton of side emphasis to kind of make the genre work. But I write fantasy, and fantasy with very involved magic systems and world building. And there was a bit of talk about world building, but it was more kind of how you create the settings, not necessarily about literally building a whole world. So it just definitely wasn't the kind of world building that I do. And I think I go a lot crazier than many fantasy writers, so this might not be an issue for some. Like, what they went into might be sufficient, especially at an introductory level. But for me, it felt like there were large chunks missing as a fantasy writer that would need to be supplemented. My world building, my magic building, all of that part of my process is very, very integral to how I do everything else, how I do character, how I do, like, everything. And I can't speak to other genres, but it's possible that this is a thing for some other types of genre fiction as well. Anything that's, like, super specific, so I could see maybe you wanting to do some supplementary reading or research if you're doing, like, mysteries or something like that, but they talk a decent bit about pacing and suspense, so, like, honestly, even mystery is probably covered pretty well by this course. It's mostly just something to be aware of so you can compensate in other ways, especially because I'm a, fantasy writer, world builder channel, so I imagine most of you are somewhere in that category, and so, something to think about. But, you can compensate in other ways. I don't really know a good alternative that is as good of a course structure as this, but geared towards fantasy specifically. If you know one, let me know. It'd be interesting to check out. So I am not saying if you're a really deep fantasy world builder, you can't take this course, but it's something that you should factor into your decision because you need to compensate for that part of, craft that you need to learn. Fourth, taking this course involves using their site for it. And there were a number of people in my cohort that struggled with it a bit, mainly at first, just due to understanding the technology side of it, being able to check into everything. There's a decent bit of moving parts, and just figuring out how to navigate it all. I think the course is very well made, and I had no trouble navigating it. I've taken online courses before. It's pretty par for the course, so I don't really think it's a fault of the course, but if you are not an even remotely tech-savvy person or familiar with online sites like this, then an online course like this may not be the best fit for you, especially because it is fast-paced and you need to hit the ground running. So in that case, if you still wanted to take it, I would probably recommend having someone that can help you get situated and figure out where to go and kind of make yourself a checklist of how to go through everything and find everything you need to find throughout the course of a week. And lastly, or fifth, I guess, this is geared towards beginners. Or beginner-ish. So if you are not a beginner, you might not get as much value as someone that is. But there is a lot of material in the course, like a lot. So even if you're in the beginner intermediate range of the craft learning journey, you will probably still benefit a lot. I will be very interested to see if Reedsy ever comes out with a more advanced course, something that assumes you've taken the first one or already knows the basics or something like that. That would be really exciting. But one last note is that the daily writing word count goals is geared towards finishing the course with about 75,000 words. So if you're an overwriter or you are writing in a genre with typically longer word counts, cough cough epic fantasy, you will either need to write at a faster, quicker pace, or you won't be done by the end of the course, which isn't the end of the world. The first draft I ever wrote was at like 150,000 words, as I mentioned, so yeah, just something to keep in mind. I think 75,000 is pretty reasonable for a first draft in most cases, though. Definitely way more reasonable than a 50,000 word first draft, for sure. But yeah, I am really happy I got to take this class and that Reedsy reached out to me. I have had a lot of fun. And I have an affiliate link in the description, which doesn't cost you any extra money, but Reedsy gives me a small cut if I've referred anyone. You know how it is. So if you are going to sign up, I would not mind if you use my link. I can buy more swords. But yes, also use my 10% off discount code, Maddie10. And they have courses starting every couple of months. The next one starts October 28th, and the one after that starts on January 6th. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.